One of the things that's changing is we have to become even more outside in. We have to facilitate this listening that we've been talking about today. But also, it's more than that. How do we create a compelling narrative that actually brings in the people that we want to have a dialogue with, or many dialogues with, in ways where they kind of co-create and shape the story as well. So you know, the storytelling has been there since we sat around the fire. And it's sort of the way for people to learn, it's the way for people to lead. I mean, it's interesting to hear that teachers and leaders share different, or share the same sort of characteristics. I think is very true. And of course, the job of reputation management is to help the company achieve its strategy. And being attuned with stakeholders, understanding how important culture and behavior is, and so on and so forth. People have called the Arab Spring a Facebook revolution. I actually think it's an Al Jazeera revolution, because they've had 10 years of Al Jazeera informing them about what's really going on, that has enabled them to earn the confidence of demanding what other people have. And then technology has helped them do that through the internet and so on. Very often, the very first time that a senior person in a company meets somebody who disagrees with him openly will be them when they become a CEO. Because before, they've been with customers, with employees, with suppliers. They may have had some exposure, but all of a sudden, they're exposed to this entire stakeholder universe I talked about before in ways that they haven't really been preparing for. And that really, I think, is the question for companies. How is your culture preparing your leaders for the world that is getting even more demanding? You can only fulfill your purpose in reputation management if you totally understand how societies work, if you know your stakeholders and their concerns, if you can place your company, its purpose, its culture, its strategy, its brand, in the context of where it sits in society, right? And that's a thing that we need to work on.
I don't like the term reputation management, I really don't. Relationship management makes sense, and through relationships, reputation can be affected. But as I think a number of people have pointed out, it's very important to see this concept of understanding that the reputation is what other people think of us. Using research which often can piggyback on the work of, for example, reputation research of the type that Sandra and her team do. By inserting a few additional questions, we can find out who's influencing government, who are government listening to, what kind of impact is that having. And by knowing that, of course, what we do is, we're not saying we don't communicate as an organisation directly with government. Of course we do. But we know that's not the whole story. And if we can say that in a particular example, we've identified NGOs or special interest groups as being a key influence on government, that's telling us that we can work with those organisations in order that they become our advocates and they're carrying our message.
We have the typology, which is that we have to improve quality with reduced resources. And anyone whose journey time allowed them to hear the Minister this morning talking to Jim Nocti on the Today programme will understand that I am not allowed to talk about cuts. I have to talk about improving quality with reduced resources. And I think it's important to then understand that that's set against a significant set of changes that we're only just beginning to get our head around. We just about come to terms with a reduction in deference, but we have yet, I think, to fully appreciate the way in which the world has changed and the way in which the public are relating to us, and we need to relate to them. And what has really, I think, surprised the NHS is the extent to which social media and new technology has impacted upon it. It was only quite recently that I was talking to the chair of my local hospital in South London, who was completely unaware that there was a whole conversation going on about that hospital on the neighbourhood forum. So I could go onto the East Dulwich forum, no better or worse than any other neighbourhood internet forum, and I could see a whole conversation going on about different bits of the local hospital that that hospital was basically unaware of and was paying no attention to whatsoever in terms of how it might be thinking about its reputation. And it seems to me that that kind of then, the way we've approached the management of our reputation and the way we might need to think about it moving forward is to kind of start to engage in a much broader conversation about risk. So we had to make sure, a bit like the Newton's cradle, we had to make sure that we had a whole series of stakeholders lined up because we couldn't afford one GP in one surgery in one interaction to say, this is all about money, because actually we would have been lost at that point. Yes, we've got to have a powerful case for change, but what we've done in the past is we've then thought once we've got the case for change, we could implement it fast. And there was a real culture of thinking, okay, we've got everyone bought in, now we must move fast. And then, of course, all the underlying emotional reasons why people actually might be opposed to that then become a block and a barrier. Why did you become a psychologist? Why did you become a nurse? What is it about that identity that excites you about the opportunity to re-engineer this relationship? And how are we going to work with our patients and their carers and the wider public to actually make sure that not only what we want to do, but the way that we do it makes sense. It acknowledges that actually you must get the agreement of all stakeholders, both to the case for change and for the process of change, and also that you have to be humble, not just about what you want to do, but be humble about the way you want to do it.
But sometimes a positive message sent by the wrong messenger can have a negative impact. So you might come and say,
yes,
this is a great idea.
Yeah.
A couple of ministers says, well, it's a great idea to close this. Actually, the more this person is positive, the more all of us are negative. You can have false friends. So the work that Tony and I did with Bjorn in Sweden, we actually found that actually, if you've got big Swedish companies coming into this area saying this gas exploration is a good thing, people would fight against it. So it's not just the message, it's the messenger. And it's not just that messages can have no impact, they can have negative impact. So it's understanding that. And for me, it goes back to the psychology of it. We want to be influenced by people who are like us. And I think what Peter is doing is that the message needs to come from someone like you, someone we empathize with, sometimes someone we respect. And who we respect sometimes appeals to role. We respect a nurse or a doctor because we might want to be like them. Exactly the same in Sweden. We might respect a local person because we can connect with them, we want to be like them. And Bjorn's example shows us how the internet is allowing us to develop more of these communities of people like us. So that's the sort of connection that I see. All of the senior directors need to take responsibility because reputation is not just about communications, it's about reputation with employees, with customers, suppliers and shareholders. And so we did some work in Aviva when Steve Payne was the director of corporate communications there, where we actually created a risk committee in which the director of marketing, the HR director, would all be part of, so we could share data and say this data should be able to be provided into the boardroom. So part of the reason our centre was started was because as companies get bigger, the board is more removed from those key stakeholders. There isn't the right information into the boardroom. So getting the right information from the right stakeholders into the boardroom can let you make good decisions. The type of information should relate to the causes of reputation. Some of those causes are direct experiences. Some of those are, if you like, indirect experiences. And we've been speaking about a lot of those indirect experiences today. Importantly, it's not just experiences, but it's also outcomes. Which behaviors do these particular experiences drive? So for me, I think it's very much like creating a corporate dashboard. A board has financial performance that allows you to look at the, if you like, down the road and see where you've been. It's almost like the speedometer in a car. The reputation data for me is a bit like the fuel tank or the the rev counter. You can be going 70 miles an hour, but if you've got no fuel and you're doing 15,000 revs, it's not going to last. So good performance with low customer satisfaction and low customer retention, alarm bells should ring. So simple information. I think too often in boardrooms, you get thrown the reputation report, 200 questions, la-di-da-di-da, what does it all mean? We need to actually look at causes and consequences, experiences and stakeholder behaviors and link them together. And I think, for me, it should be that all directors are responsible for doing this. That there's a lack of skill, I think, in some of the reporting of these measures at board level.